This is what happened to every lost Simpsons character, starting off with the beloved Edna Krabappel, who for the first 25 seasons of the show, served as Bart's chain-smoking sarcastic teacher, who would often make hilariously inappropriate comments while teaching her class.
She's faking it.
And honestly, when I was growing up, Mrs. K was always one of my favorite characters, as no matter how many times she would tell Bart off in a brutal fashion, she always kept a soft spot for the young Hellraiser, with this best being seen in Season 2's Bart Gets an F, after Mrs. Krabappel originally fails Bart, but after seeing how desperate he is to pass her class, along with the amount of work that he's put in to do so, well, then Edna Krabappel finally shows us her sensitive side by allowing an eager Bart Simpson to pass her class.
You just demonstrated applied knowledge. And due to the difficulty and relative obscurity of the reference, you deserve an extra point on your exam. Hey, it's only fair.
You mean I passed?
Just barely.
And it's not just Edna's relationship with Bart that made her such an incredible character, as all throughout The Simpsons, Edna has had an incredibly up and down love life, with Mrs. K having flings with Seymour Skinner, comic book guy Moe Szyslak, and before Bart rudely interrupted, Sideshow Bob.
Oh, you.
Mrs. Krabappel, no! That's Sideshow Bob!
Oh, well, that's the last time I announced my dinner plans in class.
However, this doesn't stop Mrs. Krabappel from trying to find the love of her life, which thankfully she's finally able to do in season 22 when she meets Ned Flanders and they start flan-diddly-doodly dating.
Oh, did a volcano erupt in Candyland? Cause I just caught me a flying red hot. Ha!
Ah.
Although, unfortunately, this wonderful romance wouldn't last long, as in 2013, Marcia Wallace, the voice of Edna Krabappel, would sadly pass away, with The Simpsons giving her an incredibly beautiful tribute in season 25's The Man That Grew Too Much, with Bart writing a special message for his teacher on the chalkboard, and Ned Flanders and Nelson reflecting on just how much they miss her at the end of the episode.
Ooh, Ned. Sure do miss that laugh.
I miss her too.
And sadly, this means that Mrs. Krabappel will never be seen in The Simpsons again. And so, moving on, our next lost Simpsons character is none other than Homer's long-lost brother, Herb Powell.
Herb?
Who we originally see in the season 2 episode Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? As Homer's father reveals to him that after a rather adventurous night with a lady at the carnival, that Homer in fact has a half-brother.
She did things your mother would never do, like have sex for money. A year later, the carnival came back to town and she had a little surprise for me.
And so, once Homer is finally able to find Herb's name in the phone book, we see that his half-brother is actually a multi-millionaire with his own car company called Powell Motors. Oh, and of course, a luxurious mansion to boot.
Homer, I think we need to get together.
Okay, brother, grab the next plane to Springfield. We got a couch that folds out.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you come here?
However, things aren't all sunshine and rainbows for Herb, as his car company is experiencing losses to foreign markets. And so, in an effort to make his cars more accessible to the average American, he then brings in Homer to design his next car.
Homer, I need your help.
You do?
Yeah. I want you to help me design a car.
And boy, what a fatal mistake this would end up being, as Homer then suggests terrible idea after terrible idea, which eventually leads to Herb's team putting all of their resources into building quite possibly the most horrendous car in existence, which of course, after people realize it costs $82,000, well, this completely destroys Herb's life.
This monstrosity cost $82,000? What have I done? I mean, the zoo was fun, but I'm ruined.
Although Herb would make his triumphant return only one season later, in the now iconic episode Brother Can You Spare 2 Dimes, where we see Herb no longer lounging by the pool in his mansion, but rather now living amongst the homeless of Springfield under a bridge.
Forbes magazine called it the blunder of the century. A little overblown, don't you think? What about New Coke?
Hey, I invented that.
However, this would all change when Herb has the genius idea of inventing a baby translator. And with Homer's newly won $2,000, Herb is then able to put this idea to the market and once more become incredibly successful.
This leash demeans us both.
I'll take 2.
I'll take a dozen.
I represent the Precious Baby Discount Stores.
I'll take 50,000.
I'm rich again!
Although sadly, Uncle Herb would only show up one more time in The Simpsons to deliver a one-liner in season 36, meaning that for now at least, Herb Powell will remain a lost Simpsons character, which honestly is quite a shame as Herb Powell is actually voiced by Danny DeVito. And so, swiftly moving on, our next lost Simpsons character, Apu Nahasapima Petalon, was phased out in a much more brutal way. However, before we get onto that, today's video is sponsored by Aura. You see, as someone who, let's face it, is constantly online, well, I am getting no shortage of annoying phishing attempts. And that is why I use Aura, as nowadays, online security just isn't so secure, with this being evidenced recently as in 2024, the national public data was breached, exposing 2.9 billion of our most sensitive records. And the worst part about all of this is that these records were released for absolutely free. And this is where Aura protects me, as Aura alerts me instantly if my data has been part of a data breach, as well as identifying brokers who are selling my information and then submitting opt-out requests on my behalf. And if that's not enough, well then Aura also has an antivirus, a password manager, a VPN with over 100 different locations, and even provides up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case ever happen. And with the internet becoming more and more infested with hackers and companies stealing your data every day, there has simply never been a better time to get all of Aura's protection and perks all on one app at one incredibly affordable price. And so, if you want to join me in fighting back against the hackers, then go to aura.com/Harryfromends. And doing this will get you a 14-day free trial to see if any of your data has been exposed. And of course, a massive thank you to Aura for sponsoring this video. You see, for the first 29 seasons of the show, Apu served as the lovable shopkeeper of the Quickie Mart, who of course was most famous for his catchphrase,
Thank you, come again.
However, Apu was much more than just a catchphrase, as he was there for some of the most iconic moments in Simpsons history, being a member of Homer's iconic band the B-Sharps, as well as playing a pivotal role in the Pin Pals.
That's just in. A new addition to our worst dress list. Those guys.
I am far too fragile to withstand an evening of barbs like that.
Although, I think an episode which truly shows the full spectrum of Apu is the season 5 episode aptly named Homer and Apu, which starts off in a very familiar fashion with Apu ripping his own customers off at the Quickie Mart.
How much is your petty candy?
Surprisingly expensive.
What a rip-off.
This is what I think of your store!
However, this underhanded way of money-making would soon come back to bite Apu, as after he sells Homer some expired meat, Homer then gets food poisoning and goes on the full offensive to expose Apu, which he does by teaming up with Kent Brockman wearing a ridiculous cowboy hat and ultimately getting the footage he needs to expose Apu.
Oh no, it is encrusted with filth. Oh well, let's sell it anyway. Now this is just between me and you. Smashed hat.
And boy, this expose really takes a toll on Apu, who after a deep and emotional walk through Springfield, finally shows his first signs of serious character development, as instead of being angry at Homer for getting him fired, he instead pleads with Homer to let him work off his debt for poisoning him.
I have come to make amends, sir. At first, I blamed you for squealing, but then I realized it was I who wronged you. So I have come to work off my debt. I am at your service.
And after a couple of weeks doing every laborious task under the sun, Apu is truly able to immerse himself within the Simpsons family, which in my view then makes this one of the greatest side character episodes of the Simpsons golden era, as Apu and the rest of the Simpsons then bless us with an upbeat song about how Apu no longer needs the Quickie Mart. However, beneath Apu's confident bravado, he's still incredibly fragile, with this being the first time in The Simpsons that we truly get to see Apu in such an emotional state. Although, boy, Homer doesn't really seem to appreciate this as much as I do.
Hey, he's not happy at all. He lied to us through song. I hate when people do that.
And so, once the Simpson family realizes just how upset Apu truly is, because of all of Apu's good deeds previously, Homer then agrees to venture out to India in order to meet the founder of the original Quickie Mart and plead for Apu's job back.
But, sir, the head office is in India.
Okay.
Dad, that's over 10,000 miles away.
I'm aware of that.
That's over 16,000 kilometers.
Don't!
And boy, that really went full circle, didn't it? Anyway, regardless, after some train surfing and a movie-style walk through the mountains later, they're finally ready to get Apu his job back. Well, that is, unless Homer finds a way to mess it up.
Are you really the head of the Quickie Mart?
Yes,
Really?
yes,
You?
yes. I hope this has been enlightening for you.
But I must...
Thank you. Come again.
However, as it turns out, all of this ends up being incredibly unnecessary, as Apu then performs yet another heroic act by taking a bullet in the chest for James Woods, which, I mean, of course, in true Simpsons style, allows him to immediately get his job back at the Quickie Mart.
I got you your job back at the Quickie Mart.
Oh, Mr. Woods, you're...
But as for me, I'm off to battle aliens on a faraway planet.
Although, once we had the storyline with the octuplets and Apu cheating on his wife, the next truly big news that we would receive on Apu was that he was being cancelled in 2020 for being too offensive, with Apu's voice actor Hank Azaria publicly stating that he will never do the voice again.
You know, the idea that anybody was young or old, past or present, was bullied or teased based on the character of Apu, it just really makes me sad.
And honestly, the cancellation of Apu is really tragic, as Apu was never even intended to be an offensive character, and in fact, most of Springfield really likes him. I mean, hey, I'm originally from Scotland, so I've had a lot of people come up to me and do Groundskeeper Willie.
It won't last. Brothers and sisters are natural enemies, like Englishmen and Scots, or Welshmen and Scots, or Japanese and Scots, or Scots and other Scots. Damn Scots! They ruined Scotland!
However, I view both Groundskeeper Willie and Apu in the same light, in that they're both incredibly light-hearted characters who are intentional spoofs of their country. And if it's the characterization that makes them cancelable, then why has Apu been cancelled and Groundskeeper Willie is still on the air? However, with Disney now owning The Simpsons, it looks like Apu will forever be cancelled. And so, moving on to our next Lost Simpsons character, we have the much more emotional tale of Homer's mother, Mona Simpson, who we are first introduced to in Season 7's Mother Simpson, after Homer fakes his own death and then, ironically, ends up falling into his own grave.
You awful, awful man! Get out of my son's grave!
I hate to rain on your parade, lady, but this is my grave. Hey, wait a minute. Mom?
However, despite Mona originally getting on well with Homer, Marge, and her grandkids, there is still some suspicion about her arrival once she hides from a police car that's passing by.
Gotta run. Grandma stuff.
Although to Mona's defense, she actually has a great explanation for this, as well as, well, you know, abandoning her son. You see, in the 1960s, Mona joined a rebellion to take down the evil Montgomery Burns. However, after helping who she thought was an old man back to his feet, this turns out to be none other than good old Monty Burns, who then promises to hunt down Mona forever.
You just made a very big mistake. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison.
My asthma's gone. Listen to me breathe.
And sadly, with this bounty on her head, it truly was only a matter of time before Monty catches her, with Mona then forced to go on the run once again, and the goodbye scene between Homer and his mother being one of the most incredibly emotional in Simpsons history.
Don't worry, Homer. You'll always be a part of me.
Although despite this goodbye, this is far from the last time that we see Mona Simpson, as many years later in season 15, Mona makes her triumphant return.
But it's so hard for me to trust you. Oh, what the heck? Give me a hug, you.
Homer, you're hugging a bum.
I know, I'm working my way up to you.
And when I say triumphant, I really mean triumphant, as Mona is finally able to win her lawsuit against Mr. Burns, and even gets the germ warfare lab that she fought so fiercely against in the 1960s, named in her honor.
I hereby rename the Burns Germ Warfare Lab the Grandma Simpson Peace Museum and Kid Interactive Learnatorium.
However, this turns out to be nothing but a ruse from Mr. Burns to get Mona to admit to having used a fake identity, which of course then causes Mona to be arrested once again. Although boy, Mona certainly had other plans, as she hijacks the prison bus, crashes it off a cliff, and flees at the very last second so that she can fake her own death.
Homer, your mother loves you. I escaped from the bus the moment before it plunged off the cliff. I then hitched a ride from a nice young couple.
And honestly, this is what made me love Mona so much when I watched The Simpsons as a kid, as despite only appearing on very rare occasions, she always brought an incredibly chaotic energy, which of course then made for incredibly entertaining episodes, with Mona somehow managing to blend being a rebellious outlaw with having an incredibly sweet and loving affection for her family.
I'll save you, Dad. Karate! Grandma!
And sadly, Mona Simpson would officially be killed off in season 19. Which honestly, I felt was incredibly strange, as there's so much more that could have been explored with her character, as well as, of course, her relationships with Homer and the family. And hey, maybe even an episode rekindling her romance with Abe could have been fun. But instead, aside from a few appearances in flashbacks or as a ghost, Mona Simpson will forever be a lost Simpsons character. And so, our next Lost Simpsons character is actually a double header of Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure, who up until season 10 were voiced by the incredibly talented Phil Hartman.
Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me from such nature films as Earwigs, Ooh, and Man vs. Nature, The Road to Victory.
And honestly, both of these characters were amongst the all-time greats of The Simpsons, with Lionel Hutz essentially serving as the 90s version of Saul Goodman, with his incredibly unethical law practices and instantly memorable one-liners.
So you don't work on a contingency basis?
No, money down. Oops, shouldn't have this bar association logo here either.
Whereas Troy McClure served as the perfect washed-up Hollywood actor, whose smarmy personality and cheesy smile was only outweighed by his desire to reclaim any kind of fame, which we infamously see in season 7's A Fish Called Selma, where after rumors start to leak of Troy's strange fish fetish, well then, of course, in true fame-hungry style, Troy McClure then thrusts himself into a loveless marriage with Selma in order to try and save his public image.
That's right, boys! Troy's back from the gutter, and he's brought someone with him!
And in fact, this ploy ends up working so well that Troy McClure ultimately ends up being cast in the musical The Planet of the Apes, which, may I just say, is one of the greatest pieces of art ever produced. However, despite all of the laughs that these two characters gave us throughout the years, this story unfortunately has a tragic ending, as Phil Hartman, the voice for both Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure, among many others, was fatally shot by his wife in his bed at age 49, with this deeply shocking news affecting the entire cast and crew of The Simpsons so deeply that Matt Groening then immediately put out a touching statement, before then including a special tribute to Phil at the end of season 10's Bart the Mother. And of course, this unfortunately means that we'll never see Lionel Hutz or Troy McClure in The Simpsons again. And so, before we get onto our final Lost Simpsons character, here are a few honorable mentions. Starting off with Lisa's mentor and close personal friend, Bleeding Gums Murphy, who we first see in season 1 giving advice to a troubled Lisa on what the blues truly means.
Yeah, but I don't feel any better.
The blues isn't about feeling better. It's about making other people feel worse and making a few bucks while you're at it.
However, in season 6, Bleeding Gums Murphy is killed off in a rather beautiful way, as following his death, Lisa then records and produces an incredibly soulful tribute that is aptly named Jazzman, which in my view is one of the most beautiful songs in the entirety of The Simpsons.
Oh, what the heck? Once more from the top.
Yay!
And our next honorable mention is actually a rather funny one, as dating back to season 1, a lot of the characters completely changed their appearance, such as Barney, who originally had bleach blonde hair which then turned brown, and of course Smithers, who was originally a completely different color in season 1, and then later became white as the series progressed.
And over here is our thermal regulator. To your right, if you look through this window, you'll see where our water rejoins the rest of nature's biosphere.
And boy, I truly can never get over seeing Smithers in this season 1 episode. However, moving on, our final Lost Simpsons character is Maude Flanders, who for the first 11 seasons of the show served as the uptight, devout Christian wife of Ned Flanders, with Maude often being used as a way to throw passive-aggressive jabs at the laziness or slobbiness of The Simpsons.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Our boys don't eat sugar.
But why would the advisory board give us bad advice?
No sugar.
However, beyond her rigid exterior, there was always a genuinely sweet character, which is best evidenced in season 8's Hurricane Neddy, as after a hurricane completely destroys the Flanders house, this leads to Ned Flanders becoming more and more agitated before he finally snaps at the people of Springfield after they ruin the repair of his new home.
Gotta be nice, hostility diddly biddly diddly. Ah, hell, diddly ding dong crap! Can't you morons do anything right?
And throughout all the turmoil that Ned Flanders faces in this episode, including becoming homeless and then even institutionalized, well, his loving wife Maude is always there to protect him as well as the rest of the family.
Nettie, I know this has been a terrible day. But by golly, first thing tomorrow we're going to open up the leftorium, and before you know it, we'll be back on our feet.
Although, in 1999, this would all come to an end, as Maggie Roswell, the voice of Maude Flanders, after seeing the show become incredibly successful, made what is, in my view, a completely reasonable ask, as she requested a small pay rise and the ability to read her lines from home, as at the time she was living in Colorado and had to make 2 round trips to LA per week. Oh, and also she had a family to raise on top of this. However, the Fox network didn't take too kindly to this request. In fact, in season 11, Fox would then go on to set a rather nasty precedent, which they did by killing off Maude Flanders in the most comical way possible.
Ooh, a bobby pin!
Maude?
And beyond just this, the writers then made sure to downplay the significance of Maude's character, just to rub it in Maggie Roswell's face that her character wouldn't be missed.
In many ways, Maude Flanders was a supporting player in our lives. She didn't grab our attention with memorable catchphrases or comical accents.
However, public backlash for the treatment of Maggie Roswell would soon grow, and in 2002, the Fox network caved in and Roswell was re-signed with The Simpsons, with this deal ensuring that she could finally record her lines from home. Although, by this point, the damage had already been done, as aside from a few small cameos in flashbacks and as a ghost, Maude Flanders will forever remain a lost Simpsons character. And so, this is what happened to every lost character in The Simpsons. Let me know in the comments who you missed the most.